Alpine.
Morning, David.
Morning, Bill. How are you this morning?
Good morning.
How are you?
Can you hear me now?
Are you not hearing me, Bill? I am talking.
I don't know why I'm not hearing you.
I don't either. My microphone is on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. You hear me? Morning, Joanne.
Good morning, David. How am I identified this morning? Well, it's on Peace Trust. You never know what this will say.
I noticed that.
Yeah. It depends on what, I don't know what it depends on. When I was last on, we do have our own account, so it's that account that pops up sometimes. I'll get back to who I am.
Well, it's okay. I knew who
All
it
right, you know me. Yeah, okay, I'll just put you in there. Good morning. It's a sunny morning, so I'm like, the room that I do this in is the porch that's fairly south facing.
Uh-huh.
But when in the winter, kind of, as the sun is low, it just, as you can see, kind of takes over. My glasses go darker than they do in the car,
Oh, dear.
But I'll manage. I'll hug you.
Good.
I'm here. I'm awake. I'm here.
You don't have any emergencies this morning?
I hope not. There are always a few. This has been a really, I say that every week, a jam-packed week, but yeah, no emergencies. Yeah, I forget, what was the one last week of the letter?
There was an online attack. I don't know.
Oh yeah. Oh God. There's something all the time. I mean, there's always something, right? And so I just have to say, no, I need this time now, and I'll deal with it later. So I'll deal with it later.
Yeah. Are you getting feedback around Ukraine?
Yes. I'm part of an international group, War Resisters International, and there's actually a Ukrainian pacifist movement that's part of our organization.
Uh-huh.
And then there are a lot of groups that are also part of NATO, a lot of the European groups. So we've been kind of sharing the various statements that are coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And also listening to the people in the Ukraine, right? I mean, who feel like this is just being so whipped up. While on one level, we see on the news some of the Ukrainians, practicing to be soldiers, to protect their homes. There are others who are saying, look, we just have to lower this, level of saber rattling is how they are putting it, that a lot of it is kind of this bluff saber rattling. So we're doing the best we can to kind of share those things and give support to the people who are more on the front lines. Yeah.
Morning, Adam.
It's scary when you have two big nuclear powers. So,
yeah. And then China sort of chiming in.
Well, apparently I'd not realized it, but Russia has invaded other countries twice during other Olympics. And I'm like, oh God, Olympics time.
They think the world is looking another direction.
Yes.
Maybe they think it's an Olympic event.
That's right. I think it's more
For
like
Russia?
a game, I think. You're right, Bill.
Yep. Well, Bill Nagel had a terrible night, so he's not joining us. And I think Nick is not well. He is still with us with the videos and notes,
Following. Okay, good.
but not here in person or Zoom.
Right, right.
So I think I'm here. It certainly is nice weather here. I don't know how it is down there in Virginia, but
Yeah, we've had everything's thawed out. It's terrific.
oh, good.
Planning on getting together for a lunch at the park with some guys.
Ah,
It's
cool.
not that thought out here, I don't think.
No, it's not that.
I
We
think
aren't
it's only
quite to
gonna
the
be in
park
the
level
50s.
yet.
It's only going to be in the 50s, but we're up for it. So,
No,
and we don't go in anywhere. So,
right.
Good. Okay. Good. So questions? What are you discovering in your practice? What's hard? What's easy?
Oh, sorry, Joanne, go ahead.
No. I was going to say, thank you, Adam. I was going to say that last week when you talked about the midriff rising while the diaphragm fell, I thought, oh, really? But then as soon as I practiced it, it just like wham, it just happened. It just kind of, I found that last week, particularly in terms of looking at movement 2 in terms of our body posture, that it just really did come together. So
Good.
that I felt, yeah, that I felt was good in my practice. I still feel the transitions within, you know, not just the transitions between, but the transitions within are still not flowing as much as they should. So I think that that's a piece of my, you know, in 2, I have this little, am I stopping my arms at this point? Or am I stopping while I'm moving from inhale to exhale, you know, back that. So those are, and then just keep continuing to have to like, oh, good. Well, I've got this part of it, but now I have to, I'm forgetting, you know, I have to bring in more of the elements, you know, so I'm still putting the package together.
Well, that sounds good. And we'll work some more on that today. Adam?
I was gonna say, I'm having I guess a little difficulty with the quad folds. I find, especially in 4, I end up doing a squat way sooner than I need to, and I don't know why. You know, it's like one of those things I'm trying to work out. And the more I try and focus on the energetic stuff, the more I kind of realize, like, oh, the last 2 or 3, I really did a squat there without needing to. So kind of a pain point, I guess. But it's like you know what you're trying to do, and you just realize you're not doing what you think you're doing.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, you said, you're talking about that, and you said your last comment, and it really resounded with my experience with this. Absolutely. It takes a while to put all the pieces together and arrive at the point really kind of where you are with the form, where you don't have to think ahead so much, where you can simply be present with what you're doing at the moment and really be there. And so that will come in God's, but there is just an awful lot to put together in God's, and we aren't at the end yet by any means.
Right.
So,
Yeah, sure.
so it will come together. The fact that you're aware of that is a positive, because that allows you then to make a correction, to work on that.
Right.
Yeah. Bill?
I think one thing that I was kind of working on more is tending in the transitions, never having stop, trying to keep everything round and moving. And I was thinking about a stop sign coming to a full stop versus a rolling stop, something like that. But yeah, so as we switch directions, it's not stop and go the other way. It's a little bit different than that, more fluid. And continue to have my challenges with coordinating the breath and having the breath be full. And I think having the body cause the breath rather than the breath cause the body to move.
Sounds like you're working on what you need to work on. It's not nothing. It doesn't sound like you don't know what to work on or what to do. Rather, you're just at a good point in your practice, aware and continuing to grow. The alignment of the breath is a difficult one because it's not always exactly the same length of time for inhale and exhale. Things change, and that's, it takes a while to get that into the body to where you don't have to think about it.
I feel like when I do 10 of any given posture, if that's what I'm doing, every iteration is a different, they certainly aren't photocopies coming off of a machine. So
No.
They won't be for a while, if ever.
Yeah.
No, it's just part of the growth of a new practice. I think the thing I want to say is, don't be upset or concerned or punishing yourself because you aren't perfect. None of us are. And you can just count on the fact that with any Tai Chi form, with any Qigong, but particularly with God's, you will never be perfect. You can get closer and closer and closer to it, perhaps, but it's not. That's not what we're trying to find.
Right.
Trying to stay present with fully moving the chi in the way we want to at each moment in each movement. So, good. Well, we'll move on. So, what about diaphragmatic belly breathing in God's? First of all, the benefit of breathing with the front of the belly are actually several fold. The first one is that it is the easiest way for you to get in contact with your lower dantian. And the second is that it's the easiest way to coordinate all your internal organs moving. And the third is that it enables you to get everything inside the lower parts of your body moving with your breath. And that becomes important because we're talking about the the genitals, everything that goes with the reproductive system, the glandular system, intestines, your digestive valves, your whole digestive process, and all of that is very important. Now, how to use the front of the belly. And here are two things that are critical. The first one is that when you breathe with your belly, you don't breathe with your chest. In order to do that, there are two things that help. A major function of belly breathing is to get your chi to sink to your lower dantian to activate it. So as you inhale into your diaphragm, let it extend. And as you exhale, let it go back to where it started from. So as you're doing this, you now have to consider something. If you're doing God's, what are you trying to do with the movement? You could inhale, extend your movements. As you inhale, extend your movements. When you go from your spine to the front of your belly, when you let it go, exhaling, the body goes back and your arm or leg movements naturally return to where they start from. And something that is also a useful secondary exercise to do, which will help you to get your breath in your legs, is sitting in a chair, using the inhaling to straighten your leg out, and then using the exhaling to let your foot come back in. Now, when you have filled yourself up, pumped yourself up, just relax. And that helps you to let go of everything and helps your body to return to its original state so that it can help. So what I would like you to do is to stand up and just do movement one, thinking about the breath. And the things that I just talked about. So as you begin with that first folding down, you're inhaling, and then exhaling, coming up and extending out, and inhaling as you sink down. Exhale, inhale. And then focusing on the breath, transition into two. So exhaling as your arms go up and out. Inhale, bending down and crossing at the lower dantian. Okay, so relax. So fairly clear about that. How did the breathing feel in there?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Bill?
Yeah, I'm still working on getting it bigger than the diaphragm and belly, but yeah.
Okay. So the next piece that we want to put into movement 1 or 2, that's going to continue in every other movement in Gods, is rotating your arms. And later on in this program, we'll talk about twisting the arms and the legs. But for now, we're going to stay easy with just the arm rotation. So just for definition's sake, both all of you actually have have really talked about this before, but we have rotation of the arm. This is all we're actually talking about. The only thing is that we have to remember that with the arm, there are 2 ways we can focus our intent. So we can focus on the thumb edge of the arm being the one that is moving. And therefore, this movement is rotating in and then rotating out. However, if we're focusing on the little finger edge, that same first movement is rotating out and then rotating in. We're always talking about the edge of the hand in relation to the center line of the body. So when we're talking about rotating, you have to be clear about which edge of the arm is actually the leading edge at that moment. And it isn't always the same in every movement, of course, just as it isn't in the form. So there's several reasons why we want the arms to rotate. First of all, it's going to loosen your joints, and it's going to enable your shoulder blades to get a full range of motion. The rotating of the arm is actually going to have a very beneficial effect on your heart. And when it goes later to the next stage of twisting and spiraling, it actually can have the ability to go right into the blood vessels of the body. So rotating is just actually the first step in the process. Now, a few other things. We when we go into, actually, excuse me, let me enlarge myself here. As it were. No, David, that's not what you want. So as we're we're going into movement 2. We're going down, and the 2 arms are curving down, and the Laogong points are connecting. Now, we've talked about continuing that movement to where the wrists cross, because there is a point, remember, 3 fingers width above the wrist crease where you have an acupoint on each side of the wrist. And when you line all 4 of those up, you can get very much the same feeling you have when you get Laogong to line up with Laogong. And I'm assuming that you know where Laogong is. It is in the palm. Actually, if you take the middle finger and touch your palm, it will touch Laogong. It's located between the tendons of the index and the middle finger, and just down into the pretty much the center of your palm. And it's the most open energy point in the body. It's the one that healers all over the world use when they're sending energy into a client's body. So one of the things we want to think about is that when you're going into 2, that it's not necessary that you go all the way to crossing the wrists right away. It depends on how long your arms are, how much flexibility you have. If it's easy for you to do it, that's fine. But you can start with just going to Laogong, and then as you keep working through your practice, gradually move towards connecting the wrists. So don't feel that you have to start at the wrist cross. That's the ideal, because it does have some specific benefits in doing that. But the Laogong point is the easiest place in the body where you can actually absorb and emit qi. So we of course want to keep that very active. So when you're doing the arm movement and you're twisting down to that point where the 2 are coming together, there are those 2 ways. You can go just to the Laogong point, over the Laogong point, or you can go to the wrist, depending on what is appropriate for you. And part of that is remembering the 70% rule. If going to the wrist is too much of a strain, then don't do it. So one of the reasons why connecting the Laogong points is so important as we go into that practice, and it's also true later in 5. It energizes both of them and gets the energy really moving. One of the other things about crossing the wrists is that it actually twists all the tissues and begins to shoot the energy coming from Laogong through the rest of your body. So one of the other questions here is, how high should your hands go as they are coming up the center? And this one is really related to the 70% rule, because the determination about that is exactly that. where do you run into the point of strain, of stress? So it is perfectly all right, depending on your ability, if in the beginning you only come up to chest level. That would be fine. Just so we're aware, we do eventually want to come up to the crown of the head, but you might go to the chest, the throat, the third eye, and then to the crown. So there might be stages of development as you go through that. When you get to being able to go clear to the top of your head, one of the advantages is that it, especially in the area of your collarbone and your shoulder blades, it stretches those muscles and moves the energy through there. But following the 70% rule is really important in determining how high your arms go. Don't force them to go higher than what is reasonable for you. So what I'd like you to do is to just start from the end of 1 and do a little bit of movement 2, really trying to feel where is the appropriate height for you to go to. Okay.
Okay.
Don't assume that you should just go to the top of the head. That's not necessarily right. Okay, so just pause for a moment. So we have another point in this movement that we really want to be aware of. And that is that we want your arms and your legs to start and finish at the same time. So they need to be moving together. When the arms are bending, the legs are bending. And that's very important because that's going to cause the circulation of the energy around your body to be very, very even. So another point with the arms is that as they are moving, one of the things that you're going to be doing which we will go into a little bit more now, is rotating your arms. So let's think about this. So first, let me just say, as I watched each of you, I didn't have the sense that your arms and your legs were moving at the same pace and starting and completing at the same time. So what I mean by that, wait a minute. So presuming, let's just start from here, the end of our straightening. So the legs are straight and the arms are straight. And then they are bending all the way until you've completed the cross, whether you're doing Lao Gong over Lao Gong or wrist points over wrist points. And then you are straightening arms and legs all the way together to this point. And then bending together. Connect. And extend, straighten together. So do this with me. So I'm slowing it down a little here. So starting from this point, you're straight, the palms are facing outward and begin to bend. So the arms are bending, the legs are bending, the qua is bending. You're going into your qua squat. Connecting Lao Gong, feel the energy. If you're doing the wrists, feel the energy. And then straightening the legs, the arms, complete together. Then bend together. Sinking down. Make the connections and up. Just keep going for a minute. Okay, so pause. Any question about that? Okay.
That makes sense. One question I do have generally is if you're going up to the throat versus up to the third eye versus up to the crown, does that mean you're keeping your hands connections longer, or does it mean that your arc of your hands going out is higher, or both? I don't know.
I think I understand your question. Oops, I've lost you, Bill.
Oh,
There we are.
There you go.
I was trying using the space bar, something weird happened there. Maybe just
Well, yes. So if I understand your question, when you come up, whatever height you go to, if you're coming to the throat, there is a little bit of an arc up and then down to that connection point. So it's not up to the throat and straight out. So the same arc exists if you're going to the third eye or to the crown of the head or the chest. So you want to keep the roundness of the movement. Is that answering your question, Bill?
well, that's part of it. So the arc is similar. So if we're going to the extreme, to the crown of the head, we're keeping the connection higher
Yes,
before we separate at its
absolutely.
highest point, or its 70% highest point.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, because here in movement 2 is the first time that in your flowing gods that you are working with the central channel, or at this point it may be working towards the central channel, but you're working with the energy moving in the center of the body. So yes, that movement up.
Yeah, show us. Yeah.
Let me stay here where you can see me a little better. So whatever height you're going to, that energetic connection remains together and then separates. Okay? So it doesn't matter if you're only going to the throat, that's where it is. If you're going to the third eye, then that's where they stay together. So you're maintaining that energetic connection that you've made at either Lao Gong or Lao Gong and the wrist all the way up. Yes.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Other questions here at the moment?
No, I think I have to think about that. I think because I've been concerned about making sure 2 and 5 aren't the same. Maybe I've been separating my arms too quickly. I have to.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. If you just stick your arm out in front of you and rotate it, you can feel a stretching underneath your collarbone or in your arm. But the question is simply, how smoothly can you do that? So as you raise your arm to a certain height, all of a sudden you start feeling a strain. And that's when you have arrived at your 70%. So you want to really pay attention to that as you move into that. And recognizing that the end of this movement, the straightening part of the movement, is when your hands arrive at connecting to the extent of your etheric body, not when they separate, which is kind of what we sometimes tend to do. So rotating is tricky because your arms are circling out and in, but the tips of your elbows should feel as though they go straight to the ground. So couple of things here. Just basically where we're twisting or rotating which way. So from this point now, we are rotating the little finger edge inward. And it's rotating in all the way until you connect the Laogong points. And if you go to the wrist until that point. And then you begin twisting the little finger edge out as you come up, and it continues twisting out all the way to this point. So the changeover of bending and straightening is exactly the same as twisting in and twisting out. So you're twisting in as you bend and sink into your Kwa squat. You're twisting out as the arms go up and out to this point. So, finish what you're doing, David. So one of the really important things energetically here is where are your elbows? So this is obviously the elbows out to my sides. This is my elbows pointing to the earth. Just to be clear, here's 45 degrees. 45 degrees actually is the maximum we would like to move the elbows to in the course of this movement. So when you go down, you're going down. So let's start from here. When you are here, you have two possibilities. You could stick your elbow out, which is what I'm doing now, if you can see me, or you could be here where the elbow is pointing downward. And that's where you want to be at this point. The elbow is pointing downward. And then as you go down into this connection, you have to be careful that you don't stick the elbow too far forward, but keep it rounded and pointing downward, which means it comes in to this connection. As you go up, the elbow stays pointing downward. It doesn't begin to stick out.
Mm-hmm.
You have to keep the elbow in as you come up, and even further down as you go here. So really being very aware, not only of just the rotating of the arms as a whole, but particularly the position of the elbow. So try that for a moment. So using movement 2, because that's a really good one to work on this. Rotate the arms and keep the elbows pointing as much as possible to the ground. So, Joanne, as you go down, into the cross to the Laogong and the wrists,
Uh-huh.
they cross in front of the dantian. They do not start coming up until they have completed their cross in front of the dantian. Yeah. Adam, actually, that's same note for you, really. It's a real subtle difference there at the bottom.
Okay.
Better. So Bill, you want to really think about keeping your straightening and your bending constantly moving. The straighten ends there. Now you bend, 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 straighten, 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 straighten. Keep straightening. See, your body finished before your arms. So you have to slow down your body or speed up your arms, one or the other. Better. Okay, so pause for a minute. So one of the things, Bill, that I feel like maybe you need to work on is really feeling those connections of the Laogong point. And you're going to the wrist, so it doesn't feel like you're really connecting those points. Are you feeling the Laogong points connect?
Certainly not every time, yeah, but I have felt that, but I wasn't feeling it in this iteration now.
Yeah, well, I know I've made you think about something else, but that's critical in that connection. And And all of you were having a little bit of difficulty with that connection at the bottom,
Mhm.
because you want to be aware of where your dantian is. It's 2 or 3 inches below your navel. It's not at the level of your navel, and it's certainly not above your navel. So you have to really, and of course, since you're going into a cross squat, that changes the angle of your relationship. So it would be easy if you were just standing straight, because then you could feel pretty easily, yep, there's my dantian. But when you go into your cross squat, now it's a little harder. The problem is that I think you're feeling, because you're going into the cross squat, that your dantian is higher than it is. So
Mm.
that whole connection happens down here, where it's in front of the dantian, and then pulls the energy up the center of the body and out, and into the side channels and down. Okay.
David, would you turn sideways? I can't tell how far your hands are in front of your body
Sure.
from that angle.
So
I
remember
feel
that,
like I'm too close.
yeah. Remember that when we think about those angles from the body, that 2 is working here, that 4 is working here, that 5 is working here, and 6 is out to the side. So there are 4 planes of travel in those postures.
Mm.
So when you go in 2, as you go down, your hands are they're not close to the body. They've bent, everything is bent, and then they straighten as they come up and out. And how close your arms are to your body, of course, to a certain extent, depends on the length of your arms. I have long arms, so I have an advantage, admittedly. So you're not necessarily trying to do exactly what I'm doing, but understand the intention of what I'm doing. So it could be a little closer to the body, but the thing that happens when you get too close to the body is you begin to lose the connection between the elbow and the scapula. So you're trying to keep that connection, because remember, part of this movement here is stretching to the shoulder blades. This is causing the scapula to begin to separate. And they separate even more. And then they start to come in and go into the rest of the movement. Could you see that, Bill?
Yes, that's helpful.
Sure. Anything else?
Well, another thing that I keep thinking about is in terms of whole body movement and starting. Are you starting that at your shoulder blades, or I mean I feel like I'm very army doing this. You know,
Army.
I don't mean the military army.
So I'm not sure I clearly understand your question. Can you state it again?
Well, in terms of thinking about whole body movement, you know,
Yeah.
the arms aren't moving if nothing else is, if nothing's happening.
Right.
And the shoulder blade connection. So I'm sort of thinking that sort of start that split second of starting from the shoulder blades as they're crossing, coming apart, and then
Yeah,
how
so
do you
the
think of the movement being generated?
So the shoulder blades are demonstrating, interestingly enough, how ultimately you want all the transitions to be. That the changeover actually overlaps. So in other words, transitions are not one way and then the other begins, but they are one way and the other begins and continues. So there is an overlap. Even the breath ultimately will function that way. So, but don't worry too much about that at the moment. But what I'm saying is here that we have oh no, I don't want to move that around. That we have the bending and stretching and rotating are working together. So we have bending and rotating inward together. We have the straightening and the rotating outward together. And those points are we know where those are. The scapula movement is working slightly differently, excuse me, in that it's going in and then at this point it begins going out. The scapula begin going out while you're still bending and rotating inward. And they continue out. But at this point, the scapula begin coming in, but you are still straightening and rotating out. So the scapular movement is not changing over in movement 2 at exactly the same place that the bending and rotating are. Did that confuse you completely?
It confused me in one way, but in another way, it just seems like that's the natural place for the scapula to go.
It is.
Thinking about them.
What's the other confusion?
The other confusion is if I think about it, I'm sure it's going to get backwards.
So don't think about it.
Right. I'm gonna stop thinking about them. So,
That may help. Adam or Joanne, do you have a question there?
No, go ahead, Adam, this time. Go ahead.
Thanks, Joanne. So at the bottom, to get your Lagong point or your wrist points to connect in the plane of your Dantian, do they go down so far that they're scooping kind of underneath and then coming slightly up to that point? Or should they be just like the bottom of the curve should be that point?
Well, ideally, the bottom of the curve will be that point. However, it does to a certain degree depend on the length of your arms and the length of your torso.
Right.
So, well, I can't, for someone like me with long arms, and you, Adam, because I think you have long arms too. I don't know if you can see this or not, but yes, actually, the first connection probably begins a little below the Dantian, but the wrists are definitely at the dantian level. Boom.
Okay.
But as I said, everybody's body structure is a little different. So it may not, what I'm doing may not be exactly what you can do.
Okay.
Anything else?
I think going back to something you said earlier with the twisting, helping focus the energy into that wrist point.
Yeah.
So once you're at the bottom and you're coming up, when the wrist points separate, should you be focusing on feeling the energy move to the etheric body from the moment the wrist points separate, or is that really something you should focus on really at the very end of the arm movement and the rise?
Good question. So when the arms separate, this is first moving the energy out and into the side channels. And then you're feeling the etheric body and moving it down the side channels and down through the etheric body
Okay.
as the arms sink.
Okay.
As you're coming up, after you've gotten your connection and you're coming up to the point that you're separating, do you start twisting out a little bit as you start coming up, or do you?
Absolutely.
What's happening with the twisting in that in between part?
So you've twisted in to this point, and now you're twisting out up to whatever height you're going to, and you continue to twist out to here. Okay?
Yeah.
So remembering that the bending and straightening and the rotating in and out are working together here.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. Keep in mind to keep your elbows pointing downwards. And as if you didn't have enough to think about, I'll give you one more thought here. And that is that the rotating movements have to link to the qua movements. Your qua are closing as the arms come down and cross, and then your qua opens to cause your arms to rise up and go out. And then you're closing your qua to bring your arms down and in front of your dantian. So the legs and arms both continue to open until your hands are facing the sides. So you want to be aware of the action of the qua. I mean, we've talked about being aware of the straightening of the arms and legs, but it really is the action of the qua that we're relating to in the legs at the moment. That. All of that. Okay. I think that's enough for today.
Yeah, that should be enough.
Any last minute thoughts or questions here?
No,
No, I think you put a lot to, you kind of answered a lot of questions and put things together. So we have reminders and some new points to focus on.
Good.
I think
One
that's good.
question does have a way to lead to another.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah,
yeah,
You're absolutely right, Bill. Absolutely right.
well,
Well-
I think also just some of the, yeah, the practicing made me realize some things I was doing that I hadn't noticed before, right? Or some, yeah, things I needed to correct, as well as things that I was doing right. So I think that's, yeah.
Good. Well, thank you very much.
thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Practice,
you.
practice, practice.
Practice, practice,
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye, Bill.
Bill.